Hi, everybody. I'm just going to go to screen share mode and let's make sure we can get that going. And Yvonne, can you just confirm it's doing what it should be doing? Perfect. Excellent.
Yep, all good.
Thanks, Yvonne. So what we're going to do today is share with you a little bit about how ExoFlare people works in the chicken meat space. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our company just so you understand the background of where we're coming from. Talk to you about why we've built this product. We'll then have Yvonne do a live demo and show you the product in action. Then I'll talk through a little bit of the insights and benefits that you can get from using it. And then we'll end by inviting you to learn more and sign up if you're interested. As Rochelle said, there is a Q&A mechanism through the Zoom webinar. So at any point, if you start to load questions in there, and then we will take those at the end. So appreciate if we can turn this into an interactive session. So just to get started, for those of you who don't know us, ExoFlare was started by Adrian Turner and myself, and we lifted a team out of CSIRO's Data 61 group. And Adrian has a lot of background in cybersecurity, and we sort of saw a direct parallel between all the threats that unfortunately everybody is all too familiar with around cybersecurity, but through the lens of biosecurity. So what we're trying to build is a platform and a solution to make the world resilient to biological threats. And in particular, we're focusing on the food and agriculture industry because of obviously the importance around food security, the importance around protecting our supply chains, and obviously protecting what is a very significant export industry for Australia. So that's why we started off the company, was to help address this. And we want to acknowledge the generous support of AgriFutures in helping us take the product and bring it into your particular industry and configure it for your industry's needs. And ExoFlare, what we're going to show you today is one of a series of modules. So what we've done we've done extensive consultation across pork, red meat, chicken. We're beginning to work in eggs. And we're beginning to look across plant and other spaces because we believe that there's a need for a unified biosecurity risk management platform. And what does that mean? It means a single place where all the different biosecurity risks to your businesses and to your operations can be tracked, managed, and addressed. And so in doing our pre-work, even before we started writing any code, we worked with industry experts and identified that there are a number of areas where biosecurity risks can be introduced into your properties, whether that's people coming on and off property, contractors, deliveries, employees, etc., the movements of vehicles and equipment on and off properties, various on-farm practices, which some of you might know of sort of as biosecurity management plans, the risks from feral animals, wastewater, feed, and many other categories. And so what we're doing is we're building data-driven solutions that will enable you to protect your properties against each of these in a unified way. So while what we're going to show you today is just one element, which is the people piece, we're building a complete solution to allow Australia's food and ag space to uplift its biosecurity resilience. And as I referenced a moment ago, we've been working closely with your industry through the AgriFutures Steering Committee, through the ACMF, and others from the ExoFlare team, as well as Yvonne, have done significant user research with industry roles, managers, vets, etc. We've worked with a number of government biosecurity officers, and we've been working through an ongoing user experience process to collect your feedback for those of you who are already using the product to understand how do we make it better and how do we make it even more powerful for your particular sector. And that feedback then works directly into the way we prioritize the product features that we're building. The basic gist of the product, for those of you that haven't seen it yet, is if you're a property that's being protected by ExoFlare, we'll give you quite large QR codes that you would then put on all the entry points to your property. And then when someone approaches the property who is looking to gain access, they would then scan this QR code using their phone or their tablet. They would be asked a series of visitor biosecurity questions that are specific both to chicken meat, so we're looking specifically at chicken meat risks, and also then tailored based on the role and what it is they're looking to do on your particular property. We've then codified a series of rules that, again, have been co-developed in conjunction with experts in your industry. And if that person's answers don't represent a risk to the property, then they're automatically approved. And you can then send extra messages such as a gate code or instructions on how they should enter the property. If, however, that set of questions flags one or multiple risks, or if we already know because they've checked into another ExoFlare protected site that that person, for example, is about to break a quarantine rule of your property, we'll then notify the host. And what that host is then given is information that shows them what the risk areas are, gives them what the sort of the standard policy would be, but then leaves it to the host to make the decision on whether or not to accept that person or allow that person into the property. And if they do choose to allow that person onto the property, they then enter a reason as to why that then gets logged. So you get full traceability, full audit records, and an ability to learn sort of trends and patterns of what types of risks are approaching your properties from different categories, and how you can then adjust your training and policies and communication methods to adjust that. And then once the host has made a decision, assuming they allow them onto the property, then the visitor is checked in. And I know I said I'm going to address questions at the end, but someone just popped in a question around, can the QR and check-in work without mobile internet? The answer is yes. We have a mechanism that that we won't demo today, but I can describe briefly, that allows the person to come to an office setting, obviously not near your production areas, and complete it in sort of a tablet in a kiosk mode. And then you would do the risk assessment there and then carry forward from there. We're also developing other mechanisms that would allow for offline as well, but that's a little further down the road. So hopefully that addresses that. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Yvonne, who's going to walk us through a live demo and show you the product and do some check-ins. So Yvonne, I'll stop sharing and hand over to you.
Thanks, Chris. So I'll just share my screen. So as Chris mentioned, this is an example of the QR code that we provide for each site. So we can set up as many sites as you want. And then what we do is generate this code. This code is unique for each site. When people scan the code, which might this poster might be up on the gate, they'll get a check-in screen. And what we've done for the chicken meat industry is customize it to the type of visitors coming in. So at the moment, what our research has shown is that there's kind of 3 different demographics. We've got deliveries, visitors, and then we've got frequent visitors. So with chicken meat, a lot of staff come on regularly. And so we wanted to design a more cut down version of that. So what I'll do is I'll run through the delivery flow. So essentially when you click delivering and transport goods on your phone, you'll get, you'll get this. So as you can see, it has remembered my details from a previous delivery I've done. And the reason that we've done that is to try and make it as quick as possible for delivery drivers. So once they click that remember details for next time, every time they scan in, it'll know that they're a fuel delivery person and that they are generally on site. But they can change that if they want, but it's just to make that quicker. So once they check in, they'll get that information saying that they've checked in. The other thing that we found with the chicken meat industry is that there's a lot of use with electronic gates. So we did add this feature where you can put a message for the site. So if you have a gate code, we can put that message in and then you can send that message to anyone that's approved for the visit. So there are a few little things that we customized for the industry. So what we'll do is we'll go back to the QR code, and to make this a bit more interactive so that it's not just sort of us talking to you, we've activated this so you can scan in. So if you have your mobile phone handy, I'll get you to scan in this code. And what we're going to do is go through the frequent visitor flow just so you can experience what it's like as a visitor. So I'll get everyone to scan that code and then you'll get the 3 options. It will prompt you for a mobile number, and that's what we do to verify that that mobile number belongs to you and that we can send you that questionnaire to complete. So I'll leave that up on screen for a little bit. So I can see some visits coming through. think we've got some super users on the line today. And while we're waiting for people to scan that, you can set up multiple users per site. So what we do for each site is we have a primary contact, and that person will receive text messages when people scan in and finish the questionnaire. And then you can set up sort of, if you have a secondary manager or someone else that wants to have oversight. So we've got some vets are interested in high risk visits, so they've subscribed to those notifications. So depending on your structure of your site, you can set up different notifications for different roles. So I will start this visitor check-in. So this is an example of what you'll get when you verify your phone number, and then you'll fill in your company. Just move my Zoom window out of the way, and then a vehicle registration and the reason you're visiting. So we've got the sort of most popular options there. And then we can select how long we'll be on site and then check into this location. And so it prompts you for completing the biosecurity assessment. And we've got the little poster just to remind everyone of that. So what happens is we go through a set of questions. So there's 5 sets of questions, and it starts with pig and avian contact. And so I'll click none of the above. And then, did you enter Australia from overseas? So if you click no, that indicates a low risk and will move you to the next question. But if there is any risk, for example, if I had gone overseas, it will prompt for more information. So I might say I've been to Bali recently. And yes, I have my boots that I went trekking in Bali with. And then the third question is about household contact. So, you know, if anyone you live with has avian species or works with other animals. And then during this visit, are you bringing any vehicle or equipment that has maybe been to another site? So if you do select that, it will confirm you know, if what type of equipment it is, and some sites have chosen to track the equipment ID. So, for example, they want to know which harvesters are going along different sites. So we've added that to collect that. And then we'll confirm that the equipment is free and has been cleaned between visits. And then the last question is about illnesses. So especially with chicken meat, it was very important that people report any illnesses that they're experiencing. So we've added those questions in. And then you get to the end, you'll notice there's a lot of items here. I've turned them all on for the demo, but you can turn them off for your site. So for example, if you only have a spray race and not the shower, you can deactivate that. So depending on what's set up on your site, you can turn things on and off. And then the person will sign and they'll confirm. And so for anyone that has done a low risk, so for example, that they have adhered to all the quarantine periods, they haven't gone near any other animals, they'll get an automatic approval. So it'll deemed low risk, and their visit will be approved, and they'll get that gate code if that's what the site instructions are. If you report any high risks, what happens is the visitor will get this screen that says your entry is pending. The host of the site will get a text message, and then they will go in and review the visit. So what happens is I will show you that now. So I'll just find my visit. So this is what happens. As the host of the site, you'll get a text message saying, please review Yvonne Poon's visit because she has reported some high risks. So you'll go in and you'll click review, and then you'll get the details. So you get the details of the visitor, so you know why they're visiting, and then you'll get the high risk responses that they've reported. And you have a call button in case you need to call them directly to discuss anything. We also show you the low risk responses. So anything that that you've answered low risk, we show you as well. And what ExoFlare does is it shows you the risks and the answers, but the entry decision is up to you, because you know how your farm is set up, you know how important that visitor is, you know all the mitigation strategies. So we leave that decision up to you. So you can either deny entry or allow entry. And so you might, what I'll get is I have my colleagues in the system, and they'll be approving your visits just so you can see the responses that visitors get. But what I'll do is I'll deny today's entry. So I might say deny entry. And regardless of if you deny the entry or approve the entry, we have this visitor text box that you can communicate back to the visitor, and this will be sent as a text message. And that's why we asked for that mobile number at the beginning. So I might say, hi, Yvonne, I'll say, please come back another day when you have met the quarantine period for visiting my site. See you soon. And then I'll click continue, and then that will be sent back to the visitor. So that will then be logged, and you'll be able to see that that person was rejected on that day. So what I might do now is I'll show you what it sort of looks like in the UI. So this is what it looks like as a site manager. You'll get to see for today's visits, who's visited, what time they visited. You can go in and see for any high risk what happened. So for example, this one, the host was assessed as high risk, and the reason is shown there, and it will also show you who did that. So you will know which of your staff or team has rejected or approved those visits with whatever action has been entered. I'll also show you the visitor log. So this is sort of our version of the paper books that most people have on site. And what we've done is we've made it into a really easy digital way. You can download the data, you can filter for time periods and different sites, and it shows you easily what information and what visitors have come through. So it sort of saves driving around to different sites if you have multiple sites, or if you need information from 3 months ago, you can look that up, and just having that information really handy in case you need it for anything. And so that's pretty much the end of the demo. So I might stop sharing and I'll throw back to Chris.
Thanks, Yvonne. So in addition to the visitor log that Yvonne was just showing, let's see if I can make this work. Yvonne, are we seeing my slides again?
Yes, the demo slide.
Yeah, perfect. So in addition to the visitor log that Yvonne was showing you, which obviously has all the audit records and sort of mirrors the book that you would normally get, because this information's been captured digitally and been captured consistently across all the various sites in your organizations, there are a number of other things that you can then start to draw insights from. So for example, Yvonne mentioned as she was showing you the questions that there are a number of risk categories, and you see them there on the left-hand side. And what you can start to identify is generating reports and insights of what are the risks that are happening most frequently on particular properties, and what are the risks that are happening most frequently with particular categories of people, maybe contractors versus employees, or delivery drivers versus employees, but also even down to individual companies. So it might be that a particular company, you can then use the insights that we can generate to deliver some new training or some new communication to try and remove the risk even before it approaches your property. The other thing I draw your attention to was Yvonne showed that if there is a high risk response and the host is then entering in a reason for why they allowed them, let's say, onto the site, we then have a mechanism of sort of clustering that free text together and then starting to show you the trends of what are the reasons that your hosts are choosing to allow people on site when it's overseas travel, or when they've had pig and avian contact, or whatever the major category is. So again, it gives you an ability to better understand what are the biosecurity risks going on across your organization, but it also gives you a sense of understanding how your people on the ground are making decisions and thinking about those risks. And that obviously opens up opportunities for training and policies and internal communications as well. The other thing that this can do is it can show you, if you're an organization, as a number of you are, that have multiple sites and you have quarantine rules between those sites, etc., we can actually start to show a map of people who've checked in flowing through your different sites. So it's not that anyone might necessarily be doing something wrong, but if you look at this particular chart, person U89 moving through the sites, if they got it wrong, if they got something wrong, the impact would be catastrophic and pretty quick. So it gives you an ability to understand who are the people that you really need to focus on because they're moving between different sites or moving between different parts of your properties. But also, one of our customers, when they were working through the real version of this, also noticed that there were people who weren't moving between particular sites that they expected to see. So it can give you sort of a deeper insight into where risk is and isn't occurring on your properties. And we do this in a privacy preserving way. So there are ways of doing this analysis and keeping the data for a reasonably short period of time, because the threat behaviors are going to change over time. So you want to be in a position where you've got the information and you're drawing insights from it, and then you go ahead and make policy changes or communication changes and move forward. And that reminds me that ExoFlare as a company has adopted a consumer rights sort of data model. And what that means is that the producers own the data. So you control the data. If you decide to move away from ExoFlare, then we export the data into a common CSV format and give it to you. You're not being locked in or anything like that. We believe that we can compete on the functionality and the integrated view of risk that we bring. And we make it easy for you to start using our product. And if you make a different decision, we make it easy for you to go somewhere else as well. But there's a lot of insights that we can generate. The other thing that hopefully you saw in Yvonne's demo is that when a high-risk entry comes through, that goes to the farm manager or the host or the decision maker. If that person doesn't respond within a certain period of time, within a few minutes, let's say, that can then be escalated to other people. So it might be escalated up to a chief vet or someone else. Or similarly, you could have a mechanism whereby a chief vet or a biosecurity officer might want to know all high-risk entries that are being approved. And it's not that they're going to take action on them. It's just they want to be aware of when things are happening. So we have a series of text and other alert messages that is designed to sort of strip out all the noise and just deliver you sort of key insights when there's something going on in your properties on a timely basis. So you can then make a change in the moment, pick up the phone or text them or whoever to make sure that you're controlling that situation. The other thing I'll say is that, as I alluded to at the beginning, we have multiple modules. So another significant source of biosecurity risk is the movements of vehicles and equipment on and off properties. And so we have a transport product that is up and running in the pork industry, and we're just starting in the cattle industry. And so we'd be happy to chat with your industry as well about how we might be able to apply that, because there's obviously lots of movements of vehicles on and off your properties, and making sure that they've cleaned their wheel wells and things like that. And we're also starting development around, with support in the red meat industry, around what we're calling a digital biosecurity plan. So rather than the sort of the paper-based biosecurity plans that some of you might have and they sort of sit in the top drawer, we're creating a mechanism whereby you'd be able to create one digitally, and over time, the other ExoFlare modules, so for example, the people module or the transport module or whatever, would actually feed data into this plan and show you where your areas of highest risk are. So we understand that everybody is time poor and resource poor, and you've got to make decisions about where to put biosecurity efforts. So we're developing something that will give you sort of tailored, customized guidance on how to then go ahead and focus your energies around biosecurity. And so, we're, as I said earlier, with the support of AgriFutures, this product is available in the chicken meat industry. We'd encourage you to come to our website and have a look and learn more about the product. But also, if you're interested in having this deployed on your property, it's pretty easy to sign up, and then Yvonne would then follow up with you and we would get your properties onboarded. And so with that, I'm going to turn to, there are a few questions in the Q&A that we haven't answered. Robert asked whether the system can be linked to a boom gate And by the way, if you have other questions, please queue them up and we'll just work through them sequentially. So Robert, the answer is yes, if the boom gate can be controlled electronically and we can send messages to it. So typically there's something called an API, an application programming interface, that allows us to send computer messages saying, Yvonne is approved on the property, open gate 3 or open boom gate number 3. So if your boom gates have a mechanism whereby other pieces of software can talk to whatever controls it, then the answer is yes, but we'd be happy to address that with you live. And then Ruth asks an interesting question, which is that the system depends on answering questions honestly. And delivery drivers, for example, if they have health issues, it affects their ability to make a living. And the gist of her question is, can a host block certain visitors if we're concerned about that visitor's response? And I think there's two parts to that answer, Ruth. One is if there are sort of contract organizations or regular delivery drivers where perhaps the last time they came in, you realized that they perhaps hadn't been truthful in their response, then there's a mechanism whereby we can sort of flag that organization or flag that driver even. I think I have to check that with the team as a high risk, and that would automatically require more investigation. But I would actually encourage that if you've got organizations that you're concerned about or individuals that you're concerned about, that you don't sort of think of this as just a punitive punishment mechanism, but also it's a way of sort of communicating with them directly and communicating why it's important, that they take a couple of days off and get themselves right, because it's sort of the same as what people went through with whether it's COVID or other things. We're all relying on each other to sort of do the right thing. And I appreciate that there are economic incentives. The other thing we can say is that we do have an ability to see inconsistent answers. So if someone has checked into site 1 and designated themselves as healthy, and then checked into site 2 on the same day and designated themselves as not healthy, or vice versa, the system can start to flag those inconsistencies, and that would give you another basis for having a communication with that with those individuals. So what I'll do then is, we don't have any other questions in the queue, so I'll just give it a moment and see if anyone else would like to pose questions. Otherwise, we'll throw it back to the AgriFutures and DAF team.
Chris, while people are having a bit more of a think and about what questions they might have, I know there's some questions that were answered via the QA. Would you mind just, because not everyone might have seen that, would you mind just going back and going through those questions?
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, thanks, Rochelle. Appreciate that reminder. So I answered live the question around, can a QR code and check-in work without mobile internet? So that answer will be in the recording from earlier on. There was someone who was having trouble with their audio, so yes, this will be recorded and the team will share the recording. Somebody asked, screening processes via QR scans at a gate is convenient. Is it possible to do the same screening procedure, say, ahead of time, a week prior to the visit? And the gist of the answer I gave is that we do have another version of our people product that allows people to pre-book and then complete a questionnaire ahead of time. However, when that person gets to the gate, we are then going to ask them to verify their answers to ensure that nothing has changed. And because we're going to ask them substantively the same questions again, our chicken meat customers have preferred this sort of check-in at the gate version. But if you have an organization where your processes require sort of pre-booking visits and you'd like to do that, we do have a version of the product that can support that. An anonymous guest asked, is there a need to check out? And the gist of that response was that the version of ExoFlare People that we currently have deployed in the chicken meat context has an automatic checkout based on the visitor's answer to how long they'll be on site. And if you think about, for tracing purposes, knowing that I came in at 11:15 and left at about 11:45 is generally enough. However, we do have, again, in the other version of our people product, a formal checkout mechanism if your company policies require that. However, we have found that companies struggle to get people to formally check out. So there's a little bit of a balance there, but that capability is available. Robert asked about, can a system be linked to a boom gate? And I think I answered that live. There was another question, is there a way for visitors and contractors to go back and amend their answers, e.g. the duration? Right now, we don't allow that. And the reason for that is that it's sort of for audit purposes. You want the answer. Think about not the duration, but think about you put in a series of answers that lead to a high risk response. You don't want the person to go, oh, hang on, I should answer something else to that question that then forces them into a low risk response. What we do have is a mechanism for the site managers to make comments on any changes in the information. So that way we have a mechanism whereby you can record a different answer, or let's say that I put in an answer that is going to give me a high risk result, and then in talking to my host, I can sort of demonstrate to the host that my answer was genuinely wrong. That person can then override the high risk, allow me onto the property and note that the reason or the conversation that they had. So we do allow a little bit of that, but for audit reasons, we're trying to keep the records reasonably locked. And then the last question that I haven't addressed yet was Ruth's question around answering questions honestly. And then Ruth asked a question about how we're dealing with feral species risk. Right now, we're not. That's one of the modules that we're scoping out for future development. Adrian and myself were at an event in Canberra last week where there were scenarios being run around multiple different classes of risk coming together, and feral animals, unsurprisingly, was one of the sort of significant ones that were being talked about. So we're looking at how we can plug into existing data sources from CSIRO, from the government, as well as from farmers themselves. So we'll have more to say about that in the future, whether it's feral or wild birds. And then the last question that I've got in the queue is, how long does the check-in process take? Yvonne, do you want to tackle that, a minimum and a maximum?
I think the quick ones for delivery is just pretty much pressing one button. And then I think the other questionnaires were more like 30 seconds. So we are keeping an eye on the time. We don't want people to spend all their time on the questionnaire. So we're I think under a minute. And then, yeah, most people 30 seconds. I think if they're not familiar with online tools, probably more towards that 1 minute mark.
Thanks, Yvonne. And then another question just popped up from Bill from La Trobe University. Hi, Bill. The question that he's asking is, he's working on machine learning models for risk assessment. Is it possible to utilize the data collected from interviews and surveys to build machine learning models to automatically classify the risks? We're not in a position where, as I mentioned earlier, Bill, we adhere to sort of consumer data rights principles. So we couldn't give you the data because the data is actually owned by the farmers. But this class of data does lend itself to building risk classification models. In fact, that's part of what we're doing in the way we approach the risk decisions. So there are some straight sort of decision tree rules that apply, but there's additional work we're doing around machine learning models to, in effect, preemptively classify or predict what the risk would be for a particular class of visitor, so that you can then make different communication decisions or training decisions or policy decisions. But would be happy if you wanted to reach out, Bill, we could talk about that more offline. Hopefully that's helpful. Excellent. I think those are all of the questions. So I might hand back to our hosts, and then we can wrap this one up.